Good evening and welcome to the May 12th, 2020 Planning Commission regular meeting. I call this meeting to order. I would like to ask Madam Clerk to proceed with the roll call.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Let's start with Vice Chair Wang.
Present.
Commissioner Saxena.
Present.
Commissioner Takahashi.
Here.
Commissioner Fong.
Present.
And Chair Moore.
Present.
Great, thank you.
So we begin with item 1, approval of the minutes. The subject is the draft minutes of the April 14th, 2020 meeting. Recommended action to approve or modify the draft minutes of April 14th, 2020. So we'll take a moment to go over those.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Madam Clerk, will you call the vote?
I have to remember to unmute. Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Wang.
Aye.
Commissioner Takahashi.
Aye.
Commissioner Saxena.
Aye.
Commissioner Fong.
Aye.
And Chair Moore.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you. Okay, so this meeting is being conducted pursuant to the provisions of the Brown Act and a recent executive order issued by the governor to facilitate teleconferencing to reduce the risk of COVID-19 transmission at public meetings. Ordinarily, the Brown Act sets strict rules for teleconferencing. The governor's executive order has suspended those rules. The executive order does require that we continue to notice meetings in advance. The city has met all of the applicable notice requirements. Members of the public may offer public comments by email to planning@cupertino.org prior to the close of the public comment period for each agenda item. Staff will share all such comments with the Commission, subject to the time limits applicable to public comment. In this case, it's 3 minutes, and make them part of the record. Staff, have you received any public comments on the agenda item for oral communications? And I'm going to say a few more words about that. We are on to oral communications. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the Commission on any matter within the jurisdiction of the Commission and not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. In most cases, state law will prohibit the Commission from making any decisions with respect to a matter not on the agenda. Madam Clerk, have we received any public comments on this item for oral communications by email?
No, I just checked the email and there is nothing there.
Okay, so do we have any attendees waiting to make public comments?
I do see one raised hand, Madam Chair. Peggy Griffin has her hand raised, and I will allow her to talk now.
Okay, let me get the timer ready.
I did send a slide to be displayed. Do you see it?
We're going to hold that. Do we have Peggy Griffin's slide?
Madam Chair, may I ask a question of Peggy?
Yes, of course.
Peggy, which email address did you send it to, just so we're clear?
I will double check. I'm looking at it now.
Thank you.
Planning.
And it was for an item that's unrelated to the items on the agenda, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Planning@cupertino.org.
Thank you, Peggy.
Nothing yet?
Did you send it just recently, or was that one of the ones you sent earlier today?
I sent it just recently because it says you have to wait till the time.
Huh, okay. let me
Maybe I
double
shouldn't
check.
wait.
Okay, let me double.
If not, I can go ahead and,
I have it. Maybe I can share my screen.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, great. Welcome, Peggy.
thank you. Thank you, Pew. Chairwoman Moore, commissioners and staff, over the years, the city has tried to encourage and facilitate affordable housing, but has been hampered by developers who take advantage of our existing laws for their financial benefit and to the detriment of those who need this housing the most. Main Street was approved for senior housing. Then after all approvals, the project, they came back and said they couldn't do it after they got what they wanted. Hamptons was approved for additional market rate and affordable housing, yet nothing has been built, and it's been years. Marina is still not built. Our density bonus law was intended to provide a variety of affordable housing of equal design and distributed across an entire project. It was intended to ensure that we have a blended community offering a variety of affordable housing options. I am requesting that the Planning Commission, and can you scroll up a little bit? Pew? Yeah, a little bit up, further up. Yeah, right there. Perfect. I'm requesting that the Planning Commission review and update our bonus density law for clarity and objectivity. Define waiver, concession, and incentive. Describe the differences. Clarify what waivers can and cannot be requested. Clarify what incentives and concessions can and cannot be requested. Add time constraints. Add as a law that agreements must be finalized and recorded prior to the issuance of the first construction document and verified by the city attorney or city manager. When our laws are clear and objective, everybody benefits. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Peggy. Do we have any further attendees for oral communications?
I don't see any hands raised, Madam Chairwoman.
Okay, thank you. Then we move on to consent calendar. Unless there are separate discussions and or actions requested by council, staff, or a member of the public, it is requested that items under the consent calendar be acted on simultaneously. We have no items under consent. So I begin with the public hearings. Item 2. Subject, the development proposal to demolish a 71,250 square foot retail center, the Oaks. Remove and replace 74 protected trees and construct a mixed-use development consisting of 294 housing units, 88 row houses and townhomes, 206 senior apartments, of which include 48 senior affordable apartments and 27 memory care units, and 20,000 square feet of commercial space. The applicant is requesting a heart of the city exception for retail frontage along Stevens Creek Boulevard. The applicant is also requesting a density bonus and density bonus waivers for height, building plane, and below market rate housing dispersion. An environmental impact report is proposed. Application numbers DP 2018-05, ASA 2018-05, TM 2018-03, TR 2018-22, U 2019-03, EXC 2019-03, parentheses, EA 2018-04, close parentheses. Applicant, Mark Tassini of KT Urban, location 21267 Stevens Creek Boulevard, assessor's parcel number 326-27-042 and 043. The recommended action is to conduct the public hearing and recommend that the City Council, 1, approve an environmental impact report, and 2, approve the applications per the draft resolutions. The tentative City Council hearing date is June 2nd, 2020. And we will begin with the staff report.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Planning Commission. I'd like to introduce John Martier, Senior Planner, who will make the presentation on behalf of planning staff.
Thank you, Pugh. Again, my name is John Martier. I'm a Senior Planner with the city's Community Development Department. Just to make sure everyone sees me okay. Everyone hear me okay? Good. And thank you for your patience throughout this process. It's not easy for any of us. So again, thank you. So we work on sharing the screen and get ready for my presentation. Can everyone see that? We good? Good. Okay. So here's my presentation for the Westport development located at 21267 Stevens Creek Boulevard.
John, we don't have the presentation up.
Oh, you don't have the, I'm sorry. How about that?
Yes.
Got it?
Yes.
Okay.
There we go.
Sorry about that. Got too excited. Okay, so as Chair Moore had described, the subject matter is the demolition of the Oaks Shopping Center and replacing it with a mixed-use development that's 294 housing units, of which include 88 row houses, townhomes, 206 senior apartments, included within that 48 senior affordable apartments and 27 memory care units, and also 20,000 square feet of commercial space. And as Commissioner Moore also explained, that this application is also requesting a heart of the city exception for retail frontage along Stevens Creek Boulevard. So the applications go from certifying of the environmental impact report through development permits, architectural site approvals, use permits, vesting tentative maps, heart of the city exception, and tree removal permit, all of which which I will go through within my presentation. So the project location. So the Oaks Shopping Center is on the western edge of the heart of the city specific plan area, within the heart of the city specific plan. It's identified as the Oaks Gateway area, and surrounding of the site is a mix of uses. So on the north of it here, you have the Glenbrook Apartments. And one more question to the planning commissioners. Can you guys see my cursor if I put it up here, the little arrow? Good. Okay. To the south, to the west, I'm sorry, to the east, you have Cupertino Memorial Park, the Senior Center, and a little bit further east, you have the Sports Center. To the south is exclusively the De Anza College campus. Whereas to the west, you have Highway 85. The Oaks Shopping Center has been in that location since 1975. Currently, it's probably about 60% occupied. One of the anchor tenants, if not the anchor tenant, was the Blue Light Cinema. The 2015 general plan had within its housing element identified this site as a priority housing site, meaning that housing is expected and encouraged on this site. The housing element had allocated 200 units for development on this site based on realistic capacity, which is essentially 85% of the allowed 30 dwelling units an acre. The proposed base density for a project is 237, which is consistent with what is allowed in the general plan in housing element. So a little bit about the project. So essentially you have two mixed-use buildings, and we'll define these buildings or refer to these buildings as Building 1 and Building 2. Building 1 is a 6-story building with 167 senior residential units, including within that the 9 below market rate senior units, 27 memory care units, and about 17,600 square feet of ground floor retail commercial spaces, which in this case would double as the dining area for the building, as well as being open to the public. Building 2, which is exclusively along Stevens Creek Boulevard, is a 5-story building with 39 below market rate senior residential units and 2,400 square feet of ground floor retail commercial. And for the rest of the development site, you have 70 single-family residential townhomes and 18 single-family residential row house condominiums. The applicant's architect can pretty much explain a lot better than I could what the difference between a townhome and a row house is, if you have that question. So further along, under the project, specifically on the eastern portion of under the mixed-use buildings, you have one level of below ground garage, 183 parking spaces. Throughout the site, you have almost 45,000 square feet of residential common open space and 2,600 square feet of commercial open space. To replace the 73 protected development trees that are either removed or relocated, 386 on-site, off-site tree replacements will replace those. And the vesting tentative map would divide the property into 2 separate parcels and include a condominium map for those row houses and townhouses, as well as other types of easements that we'll talk a little bit more going later on in the presentation. So here's your site. Again, the senior housing and the taller development portions are on the east and southeastern portion of the site, along the corner of Mary Avenue and Stevens Creek Boulevard. In the western edge, you have the townhomes and row houses. So building 1 is right here. It's the 167 unit senior mixed use and memory care building. Building 2 is right there. This is 39 unit BMR senior mixed use. And then in the middle of the project, you have the 70 townhome condominiums, as well on the eastern edge by the 85 on-ramp, you have the 18 row house condominiums. Okay, so the applicant has applied with this project as a density bonus project. And with that project, as a density bonus, you are entitled to certain waiver requests. And we'll get to that in a second. To qualify as a density bonus project, your base density has to be at least five units and above. And so, with our density bonus, so with our BMR standards, we do require that 15% of units on site be below market rate. And with that, when a developer does have the option to do this, the inclusionary BMR units, they are allowed to apply for the density bonus, where they, depending on the affordability of the units that they're providing on site, allow a certain percentage of added units to what they want to do, up to about 35%. So there's a couple below market categories that the development is proposing. Of the 48 units, 60% are going to be very low income, where 40% are going to be low income. When you determine the density bonus calculation for what percentage you are allowed above that density, the base density, which is in this case is 30 dwelling units an acre, you're only allowed to choose from one of those. And in this case, the applicant has chosen to base their density bonus on the 12.2% of the very low income category. And so with that 12.2% with that very low income BMR density bonus standard, they are actually allowed to do a 35% density bonus according to state law. But what else the state law allows is for the developer to choose a lower percentage of those of a density, which in this case the applicant has done. So, for example, 35% of the base density of 237 units will allow the developer to add at most 83 units. In this case, the developer has requested a 24% bonus, or 57 units above the base density of 237, basically equaling 294 or 57 units. So with the density bonus and waiver, with the density bonus ordinance, the applicant may apply for either incentives or concessions, which are financial considerations to have flexibility on development standards, or they can apply for waivers, which are considered physical, which are a waiver is basically a relaxation of a development standard that could pose a physical constraint on the development of the property. So in this case, the applicant has applied for waivers as part of their development, which, in any density bonus application are actually unlimited, as long as you can prove that there is some type of physical constraint to those development standards, and that you can meet the findings of those as well. So the three waivers are height waivers to the general plan height of 45 feet, slope setback waivers of 1-to-1 from the curb line of Stevens Creek Boulevard, and the waiver for that the affordable units must be dispersed throughout the project. So the height waiver, again, as mentioned, is 45 feet in the general plan. The two mixed-use buildings are the only two on site that would require such a waiver. The townhome row houses are well below the 45-foot height limit. So building 1, with the top of the non-occupied tower would be 91 feet. And for building 2, on the top of their non-occupied tower would be approximately 74 feet. If those towers weren't there, we would count that height at the roof ridge, which would be 80 feet in building 1, approximately 80 feet in building 1, and approximately 65 feet on building 2. As mentioned before, the slope setback waivers of 1-to-1 from the general plan is also part of this waiver request, where building 1 is asking for the 1 to 2.08, and building 2 is 1 to 1.47. I do want to make one clarification. A few members of the public have asked whether the heart of the city exception or the waiver for setback was actually the 35 feet from the curb line. No, I do want to make a clarification that all buildings on site, inclusive of building 1 and building 2, do meet and exceed that requirement of the heart of the city specific plan for the 35-foot setback from the curb line of Stevens Creek Boulevard. That being said, and then the third waiver is for the disbursement of the BMR units throughout the project site. As you know, our BMR standards is that, if a development comes in with inclusionary housing, those BMR units are to be dispersed throughout the project site. Where in this case, the BMR units will be exclusively within building 1, which is pretty much building 2, which is all 39 units are BMR, and then building 2, which would have 9 BMR units itself. So with this, you can see the comparator between building 1 and building 2. Building 1, the red line is what is required for 1-to-1 slope setback. You can see over here building 2, and the blue line furthest to the right shows what the slope line waiver would require if the tower element is to be placed. The uninhabitable tower element is to be placed there. And if the tower element is not there, the middle blue line is what the slope line would look like from the Stevens Creek Boulevard curb line. So as part of the waiver request application is that there has to be waiver justification. So this slide shows how the applicant has justified. It's a brief summary of how the applicant has justified the waiver request. The first 2 bullets are mostly design and not necessarily detailing physical preclusions. However, staff felt it necessary to put it in there as to show, as to be honest with how the waiver was presented to staff. So taller structures, higher density, are concentrated on the eastern side, allowing for greater product mix of housing, allowing for lower density on the western side, which also transitions better with the single family neighborhoods further up Mary Avenue in the lower elevated apartments, essentially the Greenbrook apartments across Mary Avenue too. What the applicant had stated also in terms of the strict enforcement of the standards would be that it would require the units to be further relocated to parts around the site. You would lose required open space. Common open space is actually a objective standard within the Heart of City specific plan. Limiting the heights of building 1 up to 45 feet, you have the potential of eliminating 64 senior units, plus eliminate another 4 units in order to relocate the amenity terrace to lower floor. Further, building 2, if you were to adhere to that 45 feet, would directly eliminate the 9 BMR senior units from the project. In terms of the consolidation of the senior housing components, the applicant had stated quite clearly that the senior housing components would adhere to certain design requirements and code regulations that are particular to senior population, and these are state requirements and as well as local building code requirements. And the dispersion of the senior housing within a mixed-use development is precluded by state law. In terms of the first few waivers, the city had requested the services of a third-party architectural firm to analyze the applicant's requests and their project plans and whatnot. And the below 5 bullets are the findings from the application, which was also attached to the staff report. And what was found that if the standards as mandated by the general plan and heart of the city specific plan were placed on those project site, you have the potential of a decrease in the amount of open space and landscape areas. The average size of the senior units would be reduced, as well as any type of retail support space, including areas identified for trash, loading, and lobbying space. There would be a reduction of commercial ceiling heights. Just as a point of reference, the commercial ceiling heights are 15 feet in building 2, as well as 20 feet in building 1. And you would decrease above ground parking and increase the amount of underground parking below the mixed use buildings. Going off for that is the use permit application. So there's 2 reasons why this application requires a use permit. The first is that within the plan development zone and within the housing element and also within the general plan, any mixed use housing element site like this one that is proposing a project that has a base density above what's allocated requires a use permit. So in this case, the Oaks is allocated 200 units based on the realistic capacity of 30 dwelling units an acre. And they're proposing a project with a base density of 237 units. Essentially, this will require use permit in accordance with our general plan, our zone, our municipal code, as well as a heart of city specific plan. Staff also wants to make note that the applicant has submitted this application under protest because in their eyes that the maximum density for the site, as shown in the general plan, is 30 dwelling units per acre. Thus, a use permit cannot be, under their interpretation of state law, cannot be required. The second reason a use permit is required is for the residential care facility. That's basically those 27 life guidance units in building 1. What the municipal code states that within residential zones, any residential care facility that has 7 or greater residents requires a conditional use permit as approved by the planning commission. A brief description of the residential care facility would be, the primary folks would be memory care. Although each unit would be separate, there will be a communal kitchen, activity library, and a communal terrace as well. Residents are supervised 24 hours a day, although they will live independently within their 1-bedroom units. Pursuant to the municipal code, this facility can't be within the property line 500 feet of another residential care facility, and I believe the closest one is Sunnyview, which is between a half mile to a mile away. This project is conditioned, the use permit resolution is conditioned that the applicant would have to provide any license or any other state or county agencies or departments, any proof that they have applied for those licenses in order for this to be a conforming use with the use permit approval. Heart of City exception. So the Heart of City specific plan limits the uses of buildings that are specifically along Stevens Creek Boulevard. What I mean by saying that is that no more than 25% of the building frontage of along Stevens Creek Boulevard and no more than 50% of the rear of those buildings can be used for non-direct retailing of services, goods and services. So the project provides approximately 40% of the frontage along Stevens Creek and approximately 75% of the rear of the buildings along Stevens Creek as non-direct retail. So staff had required that the applicant apply for the Heart of City exception for these non-retail uses. So as part of that attached to the staff report an alternative layout or justification for why the exception is needed for the retail component. One was a letter from a retail expert, commercial retail expert, and the other was an alternative retail layout that showed what a conforming retail layout for the site would look like. And what was found is that a couple things is that the amount of retail that would be required for this, approximately slightly north of 20,000 square feet, is being actually provided with the proposed layout over here. And so whatever will be required for this portion of the development is actually being placed along Mary Avenue, which according to the Heart of the City specific plan is not actually required to have commercial or retail uses along that corridor. What was also used as a justification by the applicant was that having retail so close to the on-ramp with 85 along Stevens Creek Boulevard is not conducive to supporting a viable retail option along this area. You have restricted views coming across the Highway 85 overpass. It's because it's in such a vicinity of the highway on-ramp. It's not really conducive to pedestrian access or bicycle traffic, and the reality, from at least in the applicant's perspective, is that folks would be reluctant to shop or in this area or stop their car and whatnot to utilize this site. So according to the applicant's analysis, this site would be pretty much a dead zone for retail. So instead of placing it right here in a dead zone, you could say the justification was that, the required amount of retail will be moved over to the Mary Avenue side, which would be more retail friendly, or at least more productive with the senior housing development and the senior center across the street. So architectural design, the focus of the architectural design will be very high level, at least for me. The applicant does have a presentation on the design of the buildings in the project, and I will defer a lot of that to them to explain the intricacies of the inspiration of the buildings themselves. So I want to show you. So coming down Mary, the top illustration shows basically looking south along Mary. You have building 1, building 2, the townhomes and row houses over here. So this is what the view would like coming down the street. The bottom illustration is what the view would be coming up from Stevens Creek Boulevard, where you have building 1, building 2, the townhomes and row houses. So one of the things that staff has been requesting of the applicant is the uninhabitable tower element, for many different reasons. The main reason is that it adds a lot of extra height to the development that's not necessarily has no purpose to allowing more BMR units or any units, and its purpose there is non-functional and purely for aesthetic. So one of the other things that our consultant architect to look at was, what other options do we have? Does the applicant have to accomplish the same function of this architectural feature, but in a way that doesn't increase the overall height of the development? And as you can see, the tower element's really only located in three parts of the development. One part of the building 1 along Stevens Creek Boulevard, and 2 different places along building 2 as well. So our consultant architect had a few suggestions in which we added as conditions of approval within the ASA, and it focused on these elements right here, and essentially was to revise the primary building entrances for both building 1 and 2 to provide greater visual interest and orientation at pedestrian level on site. The first amendment would be projecting tower massing element at lower height, attached roof form at the lower height, awning overhang at the first floor, and/or change in color material application, among other possible design interventions. And also pursue revisions to the tower location to better highlight the primary entrance of the residential portion of building 1 and/or highlight the building corners. So essentially, what the architect is saying is that you can accomplish the same desire of highlighting the main entrance to a building, but in a way that doesn't increase the overall height of the buildings themselves. So tree removal and replacement. The development proposed to remove and replace 74 protected development trees. And again, in a planned development like this, such as the Oak Shopping Center, a protected tree is not necessarily one that's protected by species, but anything that was part of a prior landscape plan. Of those 74 protected trees, 14 are coast live oaks with trunk diameters ranging between 11 to 51 inches. Of the 14 coast live oaks, 4 are proposed to be relocated on site. However, the applicant is proposing to replace the removed trees with 386 trees, 314 on site and 74 off-site. So what is required of the applicant here? So we have the total amount of protected trees being removed, and I organize them by category in terms of size. So you can see, for example, row 1, you have 36 trees that are being removed between the DBH or diameter breast height of up to 12 inches. The requirement would be one 24-inch box tree. What would that mean in terms of replacement? So you would need 36 24-inch box trees to replace that. And part of this is the replacements that are proposed by the applicant. So if you go down the list, to conform to the municipal code, the applicant would have to provide 104 24-inch box trees with 3 36-inch box trees. What the replacements are 287 24-inch box trees and 17 36-inch box trees. Traffic circulation and parking analysis. So one of the main comments we got, and that was analyzed in the response to comments as part of the final EIR, was traffic. So under existing conditions, the Oak Shopping Center, if the Oak Shopping Center was leased out to, I want to say 80% occupied, your daily trips would be about 2,209. Under the senior enhanced version of this application, which is another name for this application, you would see the total daily trips as being reduced to 1,462. So you would really see a difference of negative 747 trips a day coming from between this development and what's there currently, had it be occupied at 80%. And you can see the same reduction, peak morning trips and peak evening trips. So per parking, the city's density bonus ordinance in compliance with state law allows density bonus projects the option to use alternate parking standards for all residential units. So again, market rate and affordable based on bedroom count. And there's a few standards that the application has to meet. So for example, it has to be within a half mile of a major transit stop, which is essentially just a stop where two frequent bus lines are meet. When I mean frequent, I mean 15-minute headways during peak rush hour times. As well, the level of affordability. So if this standard is applied at 0.5 spaces per bedroom, the required spaces to be provided on site would be 336, whereas the applicant is providing 455 parking spaces. So the vesting tentative map. So the vesting tentative map is proposing to divide the property into 2 parcels. One is into a 4.7 acre parcel, one into a 3.1 acre parcel. The vesting tentative map also illustrates the easements that the city will require, the property dedications, the offsite improvements and whatnot, and even the onsite improvements as well. One of the onsite improvements that the applicant is proposing to add, is conditioned to add, is a bike route on the western edge of the site, and this would be accessed through pedestrian and bicycle easements through the western driveway, through the southwest corner, connecting Mary Avenue to Stevens Creek Boulevard. And the type of bike route would be similar to a Class 3 bike route, where a portion of it will be shared with the private roadway. Some similar bike improvements along Stevens Creek Boulevard would be upgrades to include detached class 4 bike lane and some other similar improvements such as adding oak trees, off-site oak trees along the Stevens Creek side, at least the northern portion of the Stevens Creek side, as well as a gateway sign in the median. So there was a prior version to this. So going through the timeline, on May 17, 2018, the applicant submitted an application that was deemed complete on July 23, 2019, and evaluated in the draft environmental impact report. Around the time of February 2020, the applicant submitted a senior enhanced alternative that was evaluated as a feasible alternative in the final environmental impact report, the final EIR. And this was known as the increased senior housing alternative. So, which we'll talk about in a little bit, in the EIR. The EIR for the project studied 4 different alternatives: no project, no retail, and a reduced retail alternative. And they also include this increased senior housing alternative. On April 22nd, 2020, the applicant requested that the senior enhanced alternative plan be considered as the proposed project in lieu of the prior project. Although the mass of the building, square footage, and overall exterior appearance are virtually identical to the previous proposed project, the unit count has increased, particularly within Building 1. The environmental review for this site was the EIR. This was as a request from the applicant themselves. They requested the environmental impact report to be conducted. There were about 7 items that were found to have a potential impact on the environment, and their mitigation measures are included within the EA resolution. In terms of air quality, and actually all the other potential impacts, most of them have to do with construction, or at least impacts that would happen or potentially occur during construction, such as air quality, biological resource in terms of the tree removal and the nesting bird surveys and whatnot. Cultural and tribal resources have similar types of mitigation measures where if you encounter any cultural items while excavation occurs, you call an archaeologist to go on site. You stop what you're doing and basically wait till the site's cleared by the archaeologist, or at least there is a professional archaeologist on site to monitor the excavation. Geology and soils, similar to cultural and tribal, with the exception this is more paleontological. Noise, that's again construction noise impacts, and also utility services and wastewater. Essentially, the project would need one of the mitigation measures for this is the project would have to meet the contractual amounts of wastewater impacts that we have on contract with Cupertino Sanitary. So on April 16th, 2020, the Environmental Review Committee determined on a 5-0 vote that the project may have significant impacts to the environment, requiring the preparation of EIR for the City Council to consider certifying. I do want to note that Placeworks, who was the city's consultant in putting together the environmental impact report, is in attendance, and they could probably answer any questions you might have in terms of the intricacies of the document in response to comments. Where are we in the EIR process? So we've made it through all of these, and we're at the final stages with the Planning Commission meeting. And our next stage would be the City Council to certify the final EIR in the project. This project falls within the Housing Accountability Act because of its scope as a residential project. What does this mean? Well, it limits the ability of a city to deny or impose certain conditions on a housing development project when the project complies with applicable objective general plan, zoning, and subdivision standards and criteria. This project is considered a housing development project under the HHA because it is a mixed-use development consisting of residential and non-residential uses with at least 2/3 of the square footage designated for residential use. And the project is either consistent with the city's objective standards or it's applied for waivers under the density bonus law, which this project has. There are a few corrections to the conditions of approval. planning commission staff, the planning commission should have a memo that was sent out this early afternoon as a desk item going over these revised condition or corrected condition of approval. I believe there's 4. Under the development permit, the BMR unit terms of affordability, we see that there's this condition of approval has been rewritten to be consistent with our own guidelines as well as the state guidelines for what the city can require for the length of time that we can require the BMR units to be affordable. Most of the units, what we found is that most of the units can be made to be affordable for 99 years as part of a BMR program, where a small percentage would be allowed to be continued at a length of no less than 55 years. Street improvements and dedication. Again, it's quite a long condition of approval, so I just kind of just to brief the first part of the sentence. And again, this is just a boilerplate standard conditions that you put at the end to any condition of approval that requires some type of exaction or dedication to the city. For this one, it's pedestrian bicycle improvements. We took out the class 1 pedestrian and bike paths through the site, as this will be more closely resembling a class 3 facility rather than a class 1. In terms of the final map, the additions would ensure that the final map is substantially consistent prior to recordation to what's been approved, the investing tentative map, and the final alignment of public paths and easements shall be approved by the city engineer themselves prior to being recorded. And again, the same language as you saw earlier. For any time that we have a condition or an exaction for a condition of approval that has an easement or exaction, this is a standard language that we have for all those condition of approval. And for the exception, this is to clarify what the approved area for non-retail and retail uses are for under the heart of the city exception. That it should be in substantial conformance with level 1 layout as illustrated on sheet 8201. This is our outreach. Site signage was all consistent with the CMC. Conclusion. So staff's recommendation that the Planning Commission conduct a public hearing and recommend to the City Council that it certifies the FEIR, EA 2018-04, and approved development permit DP 2018-05, architectural and site approval ASA 2018-05, use permit U 2019-03, the vesting tentative map TM 2018-03, part of the city exception EXC 2019-03, and tree removal permit TR 2018-03. The next step is the City Council hearing on June 2nd, 2020. And so before I conclude my presentation, I'd like to know the applicant team is also here to make the presentation as well and answer any questions you might have at the appropriate time. We also have the City Attorney's Office here to answer any questions to do with any specific nuances with the Housing Accountability Act, density bonus law, and any other legal issues or legal questions that you might have. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I actually have a quick question for our attorney, Seth Petta, and that is regarding our procedure flow chart for the public hearing items. Would you like us to do our reports on any site visits and outside communications now and return to the process flow chart, which I have, which is that the commissioners would ask clarifying questions after the applicant makes their 10-minute presentation?
Please, thanks.
Okay, so for my fellow commissioners, will you please indicate if you had any outside site visits and communications with the applicant? Commissioner Fung?
Yeah, with regard to my disclosure, I have, over the course of several years, have met with KT Urban, the applicant, a number of times to discuss different versions of the proposal that they have, including most recently on April 16th when I got an overview of the change to the Enhanced Senior Project. I also met with a number of advocacy groups, with people from advocacy groups that would include Cupertino for All, Housing Advocates, and SV at Home. Also members from the Age-Friendly Cupertino Task Force, and people who groups that were bike and ped advocates, including Walk by Cupertino.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Fung. Commissioner Takahashi?
Yes, I visited the site several times. I live within relatively close proximity. Also, email exchange with the bike ped Cupertino, and a meeting probably, I want to say, 4 years ago with the Oaks owner at that time. So that was quite a while ago, and that's my contact.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Saxena?
I had met Mr. Mark Rossini sometime in September, where he had gone over the site plan and everything. So I met him in his office on Stevens Creek. And that's pretty much the last contact I've had with the applicant.
Okay, thank you. And Vice Chair Wong?
Yep, I've met with Mr. Tersini as of February 15th in his offices for an hour to review some plans and changes that he made. And I've also met with him prior to that, I believe in September, when we were looking at a different issue, but related to this. And I think I've been on the site probably at least a dozen times just to get a feeling for what the residents and what the other individuals have actually been looking at and trying to understand the development as well as the scope behind it.
Great, thank you.
If I might add,
Yes,
I've been
yes.
to the site many times. I go to the farmer's market often.
Okay, I've also attended the site, but I have gone to the public meetings for this project. So with that, we will move on to the applicant's 10-minute presentation. And who will be conducting that?
This is Andy Faber. We're going to have 3 people do it, and I'm the leadoff person. I'd like to share the screen, so if you hold on a second before starting the timer.
Sure, absolutely.
And then in this format, it's a little peculiar. I'm going to be starting and then turning it over to Randy Beckerman, and then he will turn it, who's the from Atria Senior Living, and he will turn it over to Stephen Olhaber, who's the architect.
Okay.
And we're going to try to do this all in 10 minutes. That's hang on, let me
All
try
right.
to share the screen and see if it works. Is that working?
Yes, yes it is.
Great.
Okay, I'm going to start the timer now, and welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm Andy Faber. I'm the land use attorney representing the applicant. I've been asked to lead off our presentation to discuss the state laws that apply to this project. The master developer is KT Urban, as you know. Also, the related companies and Atria Senior Living are involved with the senior component. They are nationally known for this kind of project. How do we get here? It's an aging shopping center. Everybody knows we've had multiple project iterations. Prior ones have not been well received by the city council, unfortunately. However, we think that this mixed use project is perfect. It's an excellent fit for the site and the needs of the city. It requires no general plan change or zoning amendment, and it helps the housing needs of the city, particularly senior and affordable housing. During the course of development, it has undergone a number of changes thanks to community and staff input. We were criticized for having only 5 density bonus units, so we added 52 more. There were concerns expressed about traffic and parking. The original proposal actually had less traffic and parking impact than the existing shopping center, as John said. But the more senior-oriented proposal now in front of you has even less than that. You know that there are applicable housing laws. You had a study session on that a while ago, and they constantly are being updated and kind of ratcheting down on cities. The 2 primary ones that apply here, of course, are the Housing Accountability Act and the Density Bonus Law. And both of them are required to be interpreted in order to maximize housing. The Housing Accountability Act, as John said, this is a housing development project. That requires that the city use objective existing standards. There's always a temptation to treat each project ad hoc and come up with new rules for a project, but the Housing Accountability Act essentially prevents that. It also says that a project cannot be denied or reduced in density unless it actually has the city can make a finding of a specific adverse impact on public health or safety. And as the staff report notes, that finding cannot be made here. Also, the consistency with city policies under recent legislation is now judged by a reasonable person standard, which is actually developer friendly. And the former deference to the city's interpretation has been abolished, which is an interesting change in city law. The staff report correctly concludes that we have complied with all objective standards, given the density bonus provisions. We did our own analysis. I'm not going to go through it here, but we concur with the staff analysis of that. Under the density bonus law, as John said, we're entitled to up to a 35% bonus. We're only asking for 24%. We're also entitled to waivers of development standards that would physically preclude the development. And it's clear under the case law and under the statute that the city must accept the project as it's designed. The city can't redesign it. There's always a temptation to say, well, why can't the project be redesigned to get rid of the need for waivers? But the city really can't require that under the applicable law. Of course, the architect can explain why the project is designed the way it is. A lot of thought has gone into it, and he can also explain what issues might arise if changes were requested. So I think for questions you might have in that, please address them to the architect. Actually, the waivers only apply to the senior buildings. This is kind of an interesting graphic that shows the yellow portions are where the tops of those buildings are where we get in trouble with the height and the slope setback, not with the bulk of the remainder of the site at all. Oops, I think I went the wrong way. Let's try. Anyway, putting aside legalistics, we think this is an excellent project. We look forward to your recommendation of approval. And I would like to turn this over now to Randy Beckerman, who also has a couple of slides to show you from Atria Senior Living. Randy, you there? Yeah.
I've paused the timer and I'm going to restart it. You have 5 minutes, well, approximately 6 minutes remaining. Thank you.
And can you hear me? Just to confirm you can hear me. Okay, great. Thank you. Hi, Randy Beckerman from Atria Senior Living. I'm here with my partner, Mark Alexander. For those of you who don't know who Atria is, we are what I like to believe is one of the highest quality assisted living operators in the country, with a track record of exceptional care for residents and strong relationships with our neighborhood partners. We operate nationally in 27 states as well as 7 Canadian provinces, but we have a major local focus in California, where we're one of the state's largest operators, including the Bay Area, where we have about a dozen communities. In 2018, we announced a joint venture with the related companies to develop a new generation of high quality assisted living communities across the country, utilizing Atria's operational expertise and Related's unmatched design capabilities. With our new generation of assisted living communities, we're very focused on finding mixed use, intergenerational locations with high density of local lifestyle amenities, town center or city center locations, if you will, where we can maximize the engagement and interaction between our future residents and their surrounding communities and vice versa. That's why we're so excited about the Westport Cupertino project. And we think we can deliver a very special and differentiated living experience for Cupertino seniors into the future. So I'll now pass it on to Steve Olhober of C2K.
Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Yep. Okay, great. Let's start at the back here. I'm having problems. Okay, here we go, at the beginning. Sorry about that. My name is Steve Olhaber. I'm with C2K Architecture, and we're excited to present a plan for the Westport Plaza, the Enhanced Senior and Family Living project. We designed the project around the tenements of a mixed-use urban village. This was part of the general plan. On the screen, you'll see basically a lot of the components that go into it. But I want to just focus on 4 of the main components as takeaways here. A significant residential component. The project is 294 residential units, with over half of them being dedicated to senior living. And of that, 48 of them being affordable units. A sizable retail component, 20,000 square feet of retail on the site, and with the intent to make that a viable retail, one that has synergies with the residential and with the community at large. Open space component, we saw this is very important in terms of providing not only recreational space, but also a walkable environment that would enhance the development and link the development between all areas of the site. And also a connection to of the development to Greater Cupertino. How do we build on the pathways and linkages that are already inherent with the site? And the last thing I want to talk a little bit about as we go through is the density, and why is the project designed with the density and the locations that it is in. So when we start off with the project, we do a lot of site analysis, and this is one of the key factors in the site is the existing access points. And one thing we're quick to identify is how the eastern and specifically the southeastern point of the site is the main access point for almost all modes of transportation and access to the site: pedestrian, bike, public transportation, and vehicular transportation. And it occurs basically at the corner of Mary and Stevens Creek Boulevard. The further we get away from this point, more towards the Highway 85 on-ramp, the less accessible points we have on site. So from this, we started applying our programming to the site and looking at how do we best position all these different components of the design. And from that, we derived our site diagram. And as you can see from the site diagram, the different colors represent different areas of the design. The blue arrows show how site circulation and access points either link up with existing vehicular access points intersections to the Glenbrook apartments above or along Mary and Stevens Creek Boulevard. It also takes a look at where do we best provide our retail so that it has the visibility that it's needed, plus the accessibility that's needed to create the viability for it in the future. And this light blue circle here represents the retail as it's most visible off of this corner, as well as it's most accessible via vehicle and pedestrian and public transportation from this point as well. And with retail, we want to create synergies. We want to have the residents positioned so that they support the retail and the retail supports them, and it also has that connection to the outside communities. So in this portion of the site, we're looking at using the townhomes and row homes that are slightly less dense and providing the senior communities over here on the eastern portion so that they are directly relatable and usable by the residents in these portions of the building. We also wanted to use the green space to enhance the experience as well. So we want to position the green space not only as a feature for the development and an anchoring point, but again, so that there's synergies created with the retail. So there's opportunities for outside dining. There's opportunities for the majority of the senior communities here to use the green space. We wanted to create walkable pedestrian pathways throughout the center of the site to provide connections across the site that enhance the experience of the development overall. And then we wanted to place pocket parks at some of the entry points to help soften and create a more greener development overall. Lastly, with parking, most of the units over here, the townhomes and row homes, have parking inside the units. We do have visitor parking on site. But again, over here in the denser portion of the project, the idea was to have that complement the senior and multifamily buildings, as well as the providing surface parking for retail that wouldn't be along Stevens Creek Boulevard, but would be oriented more on Mary, but provide the flexibility and the convenience that would allow people to be interested to come to the development. And with that,
excuse me, Stephen, just for a moment. The 10 minutes is finished. About how much time do you need?
Could I go 1 minute more?
Absolutely. Go.
Thank you. Okay. From that, this is the site proposed plan. Again, just pointing out the townhomes, the larger 6-story building 1 here, 5-story building 2 here. Again, the density happening more on the eastern portion of the site. Here's another view, again, showing sort of the overall view of the project and how the focus is happening here at the corner of Mary and Stevens Creek Boulevard. I'm just going to take you through a few slides here to end the presentation. Just gives various views and renderings of the project itself. This is Stevens Creek Boulevard and Mary. The Oak Alley along Stevens Creek Boulevard is rendered in as a fully mature environment at this point. The idea is the buildings are done in a Spanish mission style, which is compatible with architecture in the area. It also lends itself between doing large scale buildings of this nature as well down to small residences so that the whole development has a cohesive feel to it. This is a look down Stevens Creek Boulevard at the Oak Alley with building 1, the corner of it looking down the streetway. This is the main central green modeled after a European plaza. You can see how the building 1 sort of defines the edges of the space while allowing for the open green space to occur in the middle. This is further down Stevens Creek Boulevard at building 2. The continuation of the Oak Alley. This is the 5-story all senior below market rate building. Again, providing opportunities for exterior dining with the retail on the ground floor, and then the continuation of the Oak Paseo down the boulevard. A little bit further down the boulevard, the scale of the townhomes here has now reduced, but again, we're continuing down the Paseo. We have oriented the townhomes to show more of a civic side to them and provide screening elements to the driveway aisles that happen behind the development boundary, but still allowing pedestrian access and sort of peekaboo vistas into the development as well. This is a view down the central green Paseo as it relates down to the main central green. Last 2 slides here, a view of the townhomes down one of the internal drive streets. And lastly, a view of the row homes in the corner. And this is looking out onto Stevens Creek Boulevard just as Highway 85 on-ramp goes beyond the site. So thank you for the time. Thank you for the extra minute. I do appreciate that. A lot to get in a short time. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. All right. Thank you, Stephen. So next we're going to move on to clarifying questions from the commissioners. Anyone care to go first with that?
I'll go first.
Okay, Commissioner Saxena.
Yeah, so I had a few questions. First, the Oak Alley and the pictures you just showed, how long will it take for the trees to get to that height? This is for the architect. Mr. Faber or Steve or Andy? Can you hear me?
This is Andy Faber. I'm the lawyer,
Okay.
so I'm not
sorry,
the right guy to answer this question. I'll tell you, Steve.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I had
Randy.
finger problems here. It'd probably take between 20 and 40 years. That's a mature look of the oak trees. So hopefully that's helpful.
Okay, so we're talking about almost 2 generations or 1 to 2 generations from now. Okay, cool. The second question I had is about the height of building 1 and the location of building 1, because that's the closest to the road and that's the one which has the slope is almost twice of what is permitted. What were the alternatives considered to move the building back a bit, maybe provide some parking space or green space and that part so we could preserve the heart of the city slope requirements to a greater extent than what we have right now. So that's a topic which I want to have some more discussion on. Why is it that we need to have building 1 be the tallest and also be the closest to the street and be the most imposing structure there, which is almost like the slope is like twice or it's missing the mark by 2x, which is not like 1.2x or 1.3x. 2x is a big waiver. And I would really like to understand what constraints we have which force us to put that big hunk right at that corner.
Okay. This is Steve Olhaber with the architecture firm C2K Architects. So we can't take, one of the caveats is not placing parking along Stevens Creek Boulevard. It's basically not part of the heart of the city. It's not allowed by the heart of the city. The idea is to shield parking off of the main Stevens Creek Boulevard. So this requires you to either have the buildings or other types of buffers there to hide it. Regarding the height of the building, again, this is based on sort of the programmatic functions of the site with having the 88 townhome row homes and then positioning the multi-family buildings where they can get the greatest access to the public transportations, the retail that's positioned below it, as well as providing for the parking garages that happen underneath the buildings. With it also being a senior living facility, there is also having that many units in the building actually provides for a better product for operators that are interested in attracting national high-level operators for senior living projects. So that's another reason that we're seeing the height and the massing happening at that end of the site for those particular buildings.
Did you have some alternate designs which you had proposed, which might have a slightly different look?
We've actually studied this site with 20 to 30 other alternate site plans, and we've looked at numerous other ways of providing the program on the site. And sort of in my quick presentation there, what we were really focusing on is how do we create the synergies between the multifamily, the denser portions of the product, as well as connecting it to the public transportation, the site access points, the vehicle access points, because we want to couple all those with the associated retail, with the associated green spaces. And this is the one that provided the best design for creating those synergies, as well as providing a meaningful green space, as well as providing the parking that you'd see along Mary that helps buffer the larger portion of the building as it curves back. So this was sort of the best solution that we saw and moving forward.
Thank you. That's all from me.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Saxena. Are there any other commissioners who would like to ask some clarifying questions? Commissioner Fung?
Sorry, can I add one thing? This is sorry, to interrupt. I wanted to answer Commissioner Saxena on the slope. One clarification: the slope is not 2 times the requirement. It's 2 to 1 versus 1 to 1, which is a little bit different than 2 times.
All right,
yeah,
thank you.
The angle will be different, but the height is at least twice of what it would be permitted, right? Oh, like if it had been compliant, it would have been half the height, is what I am wondering. Is that interpretation correct? Hello?
So
the question.
The building is 6 stories, so compliant with building would probably be around 4 stories. So it's not quite double the height. You could say it's 1.5 times what a compliant height would be. Does that make sense?
Okay, thanks. Mm-hmm.
All right, Commissioner Fung?
Sure. So one thing that I didn't realize until the staff report was the tower features on the buildings are they were notated as being non-functional, but are they completely non-functional, or is there like elevator mechanicals and things like that in there?
We usually try to, we end up using usually most of the roof spaces for mechanical or exhaust vents and stuff like that. So I think as far as it being like program space for units or usable amenity space, it doesn't have a function in that sense. Mm-hmm. So if that's helpful.
Okay. And then, so is the intent largely is an articulation, design feature? Is that?
That is.
It is. Go ahead, Steve. We're in the same building.
I'm sorry. That is one of the main features to it. We have envisioned it. It's commiserate with the style of architecture as well. Spanish Mission style has significant tower elements that help establish the picturesque nature of the composition. The vertical element there also helps divide up the massing of the building, so it sets it more proportion and scale. The tower elements are used to help signify entry points to the building via retail. With this latest scheme, it's more oriented toward retail entry points. However, in reviewing the consulting architects' argument, yes, we can connect the tower elements in building 1 to the lobby if needed. So that's something that can be done. It doesn't necessarily preclude the tower. The other importance of the tower is we saw it was that this was a gateway site to the heart of the city. There is a language of planning, of having vertical elements that act as signifiers and wayfinders and orientation points. Kevin Lynch wrote in his book, Elements of the City, that these are important items in a city because it signifies when you're coming into areas of different importance, and gateways, arches, towers. We see these in architecture across the world. And so we saw this as another important element of the site. I know that there is a requirement to have some type of monument in the median, but as far as the buildings go, this was seen as a great way to also signify the beginning of the heart of the city district as well.
Great. Thank you. I was curious too. So I understand, I certainly understand that with predominantly senior housing units, the parking requirement is going to be greatly reduced. We actually, we have a BMR senior housing project that was built, that was dedicated to Cupertino, but a little over a year ago. And, that was one of the things that was part of the consideration for that was the reduced amount of parking. I'm a little curious with a 0.5 ratio, how is that actually managed? Are there certain units that come with a parking space and other ones that don't? Or is there a pool that people purchase a parking space for if they need it?
I'm wondering if Randy, do you want to talk to that one more as to allocation of?
Hey, this is Mark Alexander with
Mark.
Atreus.
Thank you.
Hi, Mark Alexander with Atreus Senior Living. Commissioner Fung, typically in our communities, we have almost 200 around the country. Only 10 to 15% of our residents actually drive. So we don't actually have a reservation system needed, and we probably will envision some kind of valet parking arrangement here as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, great. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, certainly for a memory care unit, that's 27 residents who wouldn't be driving. I had two other comments. I guess this is I'm curious from maybe direct initially at staff. I'm curious about there are mentions in passing in the report about whether units are rental or for sale, and I think that some of those are known, but I'm curious. Is there a definitive determination on that I missed in the materials, or is that just something that I often there's a subdivision plan that may take place in the future. So I'm just curious if any, and perhaps the applicant as well, if you want to speak to that.
Sure, no problem, Commissioner Fung. Just clarify in terms of what you mean by rental versus for
There
sale.
are
Right?
ownership units. There are a couple mentions there of units being ownership units.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the townhomes and row houses are considered condominiums, which I find pretty rare. I think it's becoming more and more common to have townhome and row house condominiums. So those will be for sale. Whereas building 1 and building 2 will be rental. One clarification, with the original proposal, the building 1 units were going to be condominiums as well. With this one, they converted to rental.
Okay, great. And then I think the only other thing I was going to comment on was that in the staff report, there was a mention of 17,600 square feet of retail. And I believe that I kind of looked back in the plans while we were going through that section. I believe there's actually 20,000 total, 17,600 in building 1. Hopefully I got that right, but just for anybody who was watching and keeping that out. And that would be it for me. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Fung, this is Mark Tersini, the applicant. I just wanted to clarify for you that the project is envisioned to have the townhomes and row homes as for sale and the senior apartments as for rent product.
Okay. Great.
And thank you. And for people who are listening, that was the applicant, Mark Tersini. Next, we have, are you finished, Commissioner Fung, at this point? Yes, okay. All right, so next we have Commissioner Takahashi.
Yeah, just a couple of easy questions, I think. First is, I noticed on the site plan, there's a parklet, very small, on the actual corner of 85 entrance, 85 northbound, and Stevens Creek. The access point looks to be, I just want to get a confirmation, a sidewalk that you could come in from Mary and walk along the east, looks like an east sidewalk on that west perimeter road and go through there. Is that an access point for pedestrians?
Yeah, by those townhomes that are just to the east of that.
Right. I assume
running north-south.
Yeah, on the west side, those would be driveways and garages, and so you would need to walk on the east side of that perimeter road. I can't really draw on it, but
Commissioner, this is John Martier. Do you want me to put that on the screen to share my screen? I have a site plan.
That would be great.
Sure. There we go. Can everyone see that? Are we all good?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Commissioner, you're talking about this parklet right here?
Yes. Okay. If you were coming up Mary towards Stevens Creek as a pedestrian, for example, yes, would you simply walk along a sidewalk here?
So to answer your question, one of the conditions of approval, and actually part of the vesting tentative map, is to have easements going along this whole way right here.
Right.
Everyone see my arrow as I'm going through?
Yes.
So along this area, we're just going to be a sidewalk which will be a pedestrian easement where someone can walk through here, cut through, and use this area as a way to connect between Mary and Stevens Creek Boulevard. Further, this maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. I don't know if this is part of your question, but I'm here. I'm going to answer it anyway, Commissioner Takahashi. This is where the shared bike ped easement is going to be as well through here, to connect between Mary and Stevens Creek Boulevard. Come through here and then exit onto this, as you said, parklet.
Okay. And then the two other very small green spaces on the north end, those also all have public access?
Correct. This is going to be conditioned to have some type of public access as well. And this counts as community or common open space for all the residents.
All right. Next question is the bus stop. So I just want to clarify that, is the plan truly to move the bus stop from current location to the west corner of Mary and Stevens Creek?
Let me pull that up. Sorry.
I thought you noted in a couple places, and it just seemed like it seemed like a bad idea to me.
Sure. And let me see. I know the city engineers was in attendance. Let me see if he's around. And Chad's in
I
here.
am here.
Hi, Chad.
No.
Thanks. Chad, do you want me to pull up the vesting tentative map?
John, if you could pull up the site plan and go to the last page.
Sure.
You can see the.
Do you have a sheet? Do you have a specific sheet number, Commissioner?
Yeah. Hang on. It is sheet number 34.
34. Okay. Let me. My computer just got frozen. Sorry.
There's a notation in there somewhere about a bus bubble. Bubble.
Proposed bus shelter. Yeah, there you go. So if you zoom in
thanks, Chad.
on the top half of
That's
that.
Steve. I did
Hi,
that.
Steve.
Sorry. That's
There-
all right.
Yeah. So if you zoom into there, you can see it says proposed bus shelter. And then it looks like the proposal is a bus and bike lane, which would be great, but I think we're asking for a lot of traffic pain and suffering, if you will. Morning patterns going to 85. It's 3 lanes to the east of this, 3 lanes, and then the 4th left turn lane into De Anza College. And so are people going to have to merge over and then go back to get on the freeway? It seems not well thought out. Versus currently the bus stop is on the east side of Mary. And cars are able, and the bike lane, the bus comes there, it blocks the bike lane, but it doesn't necessarily fully obstruct the far right lane. And so there's a decent flow of traffic as well. But if what's proposed, I'm imagining those 3 lanes are going to have to reduce down to 2 and then go back to 3. And I would envision traffic beyond Stelling down to Sage as a backup. So I would ask that we kind of look at that in more detail.
Yeah, very good. We can coordinate with the traffic division and look at this and make sure we come up with a design that does make sense.
Yeah, I
I understand your concern here, and
I understand the intent to make the bus stop very friendly, ideally located for the senior residents, which is admirable. It's currently across, so a senior would have to cross Mary, which all the De Anza students currently do, going from De Anza into the Oaks currently. It's 4 lanes, if you will, kind of a 2 and 2. But I think that would probably be a lot less disruptive than what's proposed there, because I would see big traffic problems. I would love seeing bus and bike lane there, because that is, from a bike standpoint, one of probably the worst bike route, bike conflict with traffic, in terms of the speed of cars on Stevens Creek heading westbound that are going onto the freeway, where the cyclist has to actually merge across that lane. And you get a fair amount of Monte Vista students that actually ride their bikes in the mornings there, because I see them during my commute when I drive along Mary and then out. So, as well as making the right turn from, I'm just going to go on and on, making the right turn from Mary onto Stevens Creek now becomes very challenging for anybody, which means that will back up quite a ways as well. So,
yeah, understood your concerns, and we'll look into this. We'll coordinate with VTA and the traffic engineers. Yeah, I understand your concerns, and we'll look into this striping pattern a little deeper.
Okay. Let's see. I think all my other things I want to bring up are more, these are just more the plan details associated with the actual layout, in terms of all of the other elements and legal interpretations. I think we can just leave that for discussion afterwards. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Takahashi. I see that Vikram, Commissioner Saxena has his hand raised. Vikram?
Yeah.
And then we'll move
So,
on to Commissioner Wong.
I actually had a follow-up question on the trees. I know we're cutting down a whole bunch of trees. Has the city uh, or the planning commission or division thought about transplanting those oak trees? Because I mean, we're told that it will take between 20 to 40 years to for new trees to grow. Is that something which has been thought of before or tried before? Because I've seen videos of transplanting machines, which pretty much um, like pull a 10 or 20 feet hunk of earth out and just carry the tree with the roots with it. And I was just curious about whether we have thought about something like that, because a row of fully grown trees there would help mitigate some of the impact of the really tall building on Broadway. So that's a question for planning and even the architects here if they thought about that.
Yeah, I can start off answering that question. You know, we had, not only did we take the applicant's arborist report for the trees, we also had it peer reviewed by our own arborist as well. And we looked at the feasibility of transplanting a lot of these trees and see, you know, could that be done? You know, a lot of the trees on site are very majestic and whatnot. And so, you know, it's called the oaks for a reason, right? So you want to see a lot of the continuation of those full-grown species as well. The conclusion of both of the applicants' arborists and as well as ours is that it's very difficult and very strenuous to take a tree, move it, and replant it again. It's you know, you're right, it can be done. And in fact, the applicant's proposing to move about four mature oak trees from one part of the site to the other. And the four of those oak trees are fully grown and whatnot. That does, even if they do move it, that doesn't guarantee that those will be a successful move and whatever else as well. If it's possible to move more, we could look at that and condition that and see what we can do. But it's not, again, borrowing the words from our own arborists, it's the stress, especially for a larger tree. The larger the tree is, the worse it is, the more unlikely it is to have long-term viability in a new spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was thinking that even if half of them survive, it's still better than waiting 20, 40 years for the trees to grow. That's one thing. Commissioner Moore, I had a different question about rental versus thing, but I think Commissioner Wong has been waiting, so I will defer to him and then come back.
Oh, go for it. Go for it.
Okay, so I wanted to understand the impact on longer-term house tax rates and impact on schools of moving away from owner-occupied homes to rental homes in the condominiums, like the building 1 and building 2. I mean, can the city and the applicant talk a bit about that? That how does the Prop 13 aspect of that get handled when we have apartments which will probably never be sold for the next 50 years because I guess a lot of investors would like to stay here compared to, say, owner-occupied homes, which on an average change every 7 years and reset the tax base. So I wanted to have a conversation about that. And if the city staff or somebody else has a comment on those, that would be useful for me.
You know, it's a good question. You know, with the townhome and row houses, you know, those are subject to parcel taxes as well, and you're probably going to see a big increase in the property tax basis of that development from there going. And again, much of that goes to schools. And again, you know, there is a high turnover of townhomes and row houses in the market as compared to maybe single family developments like you would see maybe in other parts of the city with larger lots and whatnot. As a family grows, you know, and expand, they're going to be looking for bigger homes. And each time you sell the house, the property taxes do go up. I'm not quite sure of how the senior portion of the development is going to affect the parcel tax. I'm assuming that it would go up anytime you redevelop a site. You know, you do get reassessed that development. So I believe that's.
John, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead, Pew. Absolutely.
The issue of the parcel taxes. So for as far as the school impact fees go, my understanding is that any gross developed square footage will have to pay whatever school impact fee that the school has adopted. As far as parcel taxes go, it wouldn't matter whether these particular units are developed as condos or not, because the seniors get an exemption from the parcel tax. So it would not affect, for this particular development, have any impacts on the parcel tax. However, the townhomes and the row house portions will pay parcel taxes as they would.
Yeah,
Madam Chair, I may be able to answer the commissioner's question as well.
Thank you. Okay, Mark Tersini.
Sure, Commissioner Saxena, one of the advantages I believe that this project is pushing forth is not only do we have the townhomes and the row homes that, to your point, will be assessed as they turn over in time, but we've done our own tax analysis as far as the current tax base for the shopping center. And by the improvements with our venture with Related and Atria on the senior housing component, will increase the tax base by tenfold over what we are currently paying today. And I want to also address the management of the facility versus a for sale product for the senior homes. With Atria's management capabilities, we see this as needed for this product type and the turnover that you see with the senior housing over time. So that's why it's been broken out the way we have it, as a combination of both for rent and for sale housing.
Thank you. And that's all from me.
You were
Chair
muted,
Moore?
Commissioner Moore.
Commissioner Moore, can I ask some questions?
Yes. Okay, Vice Chair Wong, please.
No problem. I got a number of questions. I have probably about 6, just some quick questions. But first of all, I want to say, look, it's really good to see some new housing projects that are in place. Especially the senior housing market makes a lot of sense from a demographic point of view. And it's also good to see some BMR housing and for sale units. I think it's a good mix here. So I think this is a good start versus some of the plans in the past. I just have some clarifying questions, and they're all over the map. So I've just been taking notes throughout. So I think the first question I have is, what are the hardest city requirement exceptions that are impacted? Just for clarity, so everybody has that up again and they understand what has been impacted that's exempted from some of the hardest city requirements. I know setbacks was one of them. I just wanted to make sure that we have a good list of which heart of the city items have been exempted here or suggested for exemption.
Sure. The only one for the heart of the city specifically is the retail component. Other than that, all the other objective standards within the heart of the city have been met. Again, the slope line and the height are actually general plan standards in our land use element. But to go back to your original question, the heart of the city, the only exception they're asking for is for the retail frontage.
Okay, and looks like we have 2,000 square feet of retail that's planned here and proposed. What would the heart of the city requirement have for retail square footage if we were to do that in terms of where retail was placed? I mean, it didn't matter where it's placed, just trying to get an idea of the square footage. So,
sure. Quick corrections: 20,000 square feet.
Oh, 20,000 square feet. Sorry about that. Okay.
That's okay. There's no minimum square footage to say like it has to be an FAR of this and whatever that. The only objective standard for retail is the building frontage along Stevens Creek. So those buildings have to have 75%. 75% of the use of those buildings fronting Stevens Creek should be direct retailing services, and that ranges from a restaurant to a bank. Those are considered conforming within the 75%. The rear of the building that fronts Stevens Creek Boulevard can be at minimum 50% direct rear lease. So there's a little bit more of a flexibility in the rear of the building than the front. So,
okay. And given, and this is more to Mark Tersini or KT Urban, given the, let's not take the current situation on retail and the current situation in a post-COVID environment, but if you were to look at the retail tax revenue and the triple net lease and the gross rents receipts that you would assume, do you expect this to be more than what you have from the existing property or less on the retail component than what it is today as of, let's say, about a year ago?
Yeah, so it is going to be less than what we have to date, but mostly the activity that we have in the center is the Dance Academy, which is really a kind of a quasi retail use. So the retail that we're proposing for the project is going to enhance the retail amenities for the neighborhood by providing bistro and that type of atmosphere on the site itself, and then retail that will be serving the senior center itself, or the senior community.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, and then I have a question really to the city, really about the way we're dividing the parcels. How does that get done, and does that change the land use laws in any ways in terms of the way the parcels are being divided? Usually we're trying to bring parcels together.
Sure. And, originally we looked at that standard in the general plan, because you're right, there is a standard that, we encourage lot consolidation, right? But again, it's a preference more than a shall. It's a should rather than a shall. And, if you can understand that, it's what we can enforce, what we can nudge. Unfortunately that, with the Housing Accountability Act and, our leverage to require things that aren't objective on a housing project is, it's not great, for something like that. So again, although we would, this, in terms of the general plan, the preference would have been, one lot, maybe rental houses, minimal amount of subdivision of the lots, there is, we're limited to what we can enforce with that standard.
Okay. And then I have a question about the units and the unit sizes. I know that there's a density bonus and waiver request. Is there any reason why the overall units can't be made smaller to accommodate the additional units? Is there any kind of like commercial reason? Is there any kind of, business model reason, or is there any kind of just, unit size? Actually, what are the size of the units? Just for a refresher for everybody as well.
Sure, I'll defer to the applicant to explain that. If the applicant, does the applicant have a chart or table showing the unit sizes comparison?
I don't have one on me, but I can talk a little bit about it.
I have one, so while you're talking, I could probably pull it up.
Okay, yeah, it's in the project description. So with building 1, the senior housing, with the memory care units, these are relatively small units. They don't have anything like a full kitchen or anything. So they range from 282 to 306 square feet. It'd be a 1-bedroom with a bath in there. The studios are 340 to 590. 1 bedrooms 518 to 1,000. The 2 bedrooms 1,000 to 1,200. And then in building 2, the senior housing, we have studios and 1 bedrooms. The studios range from 500 to 595, and the 1 bedrooms range from roughly 625 to 950. So these are relatively standard sizes. And again, this sort of couples with providing units that are, again, commensurate with other products that are offered for senior living. So the operators, they're trying to maintain a level of standard and a level of quality from our below market rate all the way through to the market rate. And so these are the standards that are within it. We're in doing I don't know if your question is saying, hey, can we make the units smaller, therefore we can take a level of the building off the top because they're smaller, we're consolidating them to lower floors. And the answer to that actually is no. And the reason, because it's not so much the size of the units, it's the perimeter that faces out for the units, meaning the lineal feet of exterior wall that we have. So in one bedrooms, we're trying to put windows in the living spaces as well as the bedroom spaces, and same thing with two bedrooms. And this is the limiting factor. It's not so much the area of the unit itself. It's the lineal feet of exterior wall is what sort of limits how many units you can get on a floor. Does that help
It's
answer your
similarly
question?
related to that. I mean, I do understand that. I mean, if you were given the constraint and you said there was no choice, I'm sure you'd probably be short maybe like 20 units as opposed to, getting the full set in there. I'm just trying to understand if there's a state requirement or regulatory requirement on the size of the units. It sounds like it's a business standard on your end, just for clarification.
It's a little bit of that. It's a little bit of like, you can only make a bedroom so small and a bathroom so small because there are accessibility clearances that are required. So this is dictating a lot of the different sizes of the rooms. And it's also part of the mix too. The intent is to provide a variety of mix for these senior living units, not just cram in as many small little boxes as we can.
And just for clarification, there are minimum living space sizes requirements as well by code.
Right. But yours are still larger than the minimum. I just want to be clear on that. And also commercial ceiling heights. If you were to drop them down a little bit, let's say in building 1 to 12 or building 1 to like 15 or 12 or building 2 to 12, would that have any other impact as well to your leasability on the commercial heights? Because that, just want to make sure if there's any other regulatory reasons for those heights.
Part of the heights of the ground floor, it does help with planning out those spaces in terms of getting the mechanical, and especially if you get into kitchen spaces and other spaces that have a lot of ductwork and other infrastructure that goes up above them. It also pertains a lot to the loading dock. I know in the Recology report, they're actually requesting 22 feet clear. We are under that by 2 feet, so we'll have to do some modification with the floor for that. But it wouldn't be substantially improvement to lose that extra footage.
Okay. Oh. And then just more to the city. What's the current class of bike path we have today? Is that a class 3 from what I looked at? I just want to make sure.
I think I would have to defer to Public Works for that question.
Yeah, this is Chad Mosley, city engineer. I believe the existing bikes out on Stevens Creek are class 2. They're not protected, but they have striping. Thus designates them as a class 2.
What do we have right now planned for the bike path right now? Class 2 then? So.
Along Stevens Creek Boulevard?
The cutaway on the western side, or is that the path that's connecting from Mary to Stevens Creek? Is that a bike path or is that just a regular path?
So that's going to be a shared access path. It's a driveway. We'll also have bicycle access. So that's kind of representative of a class 3 path. There'll be some signage. There'll probably be very little striping for it because it's more rural residential area.
Is there any restrictions in making that a class 1 or 4 bike path?
A class 1 bike path would need its own separate facility for pedestrian and bikes, and it would utilize more space on site. And so including a class 1 path would have fairly significant impacts to the site layout. And having conversations with the developer, they were not interested in potentially inflicting those impacts on their current design.
Okay, got it. And then I have a question and this is Atria Senior Living, is that correct? I just want to make sure.
That is correct.
Okay, great. For the Atria folks, I have some public health related questions. Just for background, I actually have a master's in public health from Johns Hopkins and have looked at different senior centers, acute care centers in the past, as well as senior living spaces and home health care. What safety precautions have changed with senior living since COVID-19? I've seen the PPE memos from your company in terms of what they're talking about, but how does this change the design of common spaces and HVAC ducts for buildings 1 and 2?
This is Mark Alexander with Atria. Can you guys hear me? Okay. So I think there are a lot of things from COVID that we've learned. We are using full PP&E in our properties around the country. We're actually basically quarantining in our communities across the country as well. And we just recently went through, we contracted and partnered with Mayo Clinic's lab to test all of our employees, all 14,000. We're the first senior living company to do that. I think to answer your question, I think one of the things we've been thinking about on design is some specifically more hand washing stations. I think one of the other things that we've commented on is just having a little more foyer space in apartments, because as people are quarantined, we're bringing in activities like iPads and FaceTiming and as much virtual engagement of activities we can, but to have a little bit of spacing. And another reason why you want to have a little bit larger apartments. So that, and then the fact that we're planning to have full kitchens in the apartments, actually, we think is something that you don't always see in all senior living communities. And that too, we believe will be something that is, you'll see more and more in the future post COVID. Those are the first things that we're talking about most specifically. I think there are other things related to packaging and storage, and that we're also talking about.
I'm specifically asking those questions only because do you anticipate that there may be state regulations or requirements that may change the way you actually have to reconfigure these units from a safety perspective? As you know, and not to put your facility in the spotlight, many senior facilities have had significant COVID-19 deaths. Density is a lot of that problem, as we've seen. And so HVAC units, if you look at in Asia Pacific, have been redesigned in apartment buildings for that reason to prevent the spread. COVID-19 is expected to be endemic. We will see these in the future and other flus and other coronaviruses, and just making sure that you have what you need to prevent or actually provide a safe environment for senior living, and to make sure that those precautions, I mean, if they change the way that you actually have to reconfigure the units, maybe you need more size, maybe you change the common areas, maybe you build more public health safety systems along the way. I mean, it's your chance to do it now and have that conversation. It might be more, I'd say it might make more sense to do it here earlier than try to come back later for it.
I agree completely. I think we're still in the early stages of evaluating that, especially as it relates to HVAC. I think that's a great point, though, and certainly something we're
your HEPA filtration may have to be very different, and and you're going to have to require different size ducts, and you might require more units. I mean, those kind of things. Your wastewater may look different as well. So just, I mean, given the concentration, you might need different rooms, clean rooms as people come in and get disinfected. You might have to think about how UV lighting does the disinfection and how you might want to do it in a robotic way to minimize contact. I mean, all these things are going into these new design of some of the facilities I have been looking at. And so I just want to make sure that, I mean, you guys are comfortable with this, because you only get a couple chances to come up for this.
We have recognized this. It's very evolving. We're studying lots of different technology as well to try to deploy what we can from contact tracing perspective. It's something we spent a lot of energy on already in the last 8 weeks in developing our own internal systems. So I think great points, and obviously got a long way to go here to design the full building, and we will be keeping all of those things in mind.
Plus ambient sensing and monitoring. You may wire the building differently with different types of technologies as you're doing monitoring of rooms. As you know, you may have a lockdown, but you want your patients to still be able to communicate with their family members. All those design points don't seem to be baked in here. That's more what I'm raising. So
we were at this early stage of the project. I think we're just more in the schematic stage, but absolutely. In fact, some of the things you mentioned, projects that are further along, we're talking about some of those items very specifically right now.
Okay, I'm good for now with questions. Thank you so much, Mark.
Okay, great. So I have a couple of clarifying questions. Very simply, could someone explain what the difference is between a townhouse and a row house?
I can start off, and then if I mess up my description, feel free for the project architect to jump in. Simply stating, at least the most simple explanation I can give is that a row house is an entry feature in the front, where a townhouse is an entry feature in the rear. Other than that, I think they're both similar sizes, possibly with they're both essentially similar sizes.
Yeah, it's basically the townhome, and the differentiation is basically how the vehicle and pedestrians enter the building. In a townhome, vehicles enter in one side, pedestrians the other. In the row home, they're entering into the same side. But John is correct, the units are relatively the same.
Okay, all right, thank you. So when I look at those unit sizes, it looks like they're between 1760 and 2468 square feet for the townhouses and row houses, and they're 3 bedrooms. And then when we look at the senior housing, and someone will need to tell me with regards to the BMR, we're looking at sizes between 282 and 1200 square feet, and bedrooms going from studio to 2 bedrooms. So could someone explain what we are looking at for the BMR units, for the number of bedrooms and the square footage for those BMR units?
Sure, and I can. Would it help if I pulled up the table? That
yes.
Yeah, let me do that. So before I get to talking, right here. Okay, everyone getting to see that? No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I keep asking that question.
Yeah, good.
I start to get halfway through, and you guys are trying to tell me to stop. So this is a breakdown of the number of units, bedrooms for each, and also number of number of bathrooms, and the range of square footages for each unit. As you can see by the townhome and row houses, they talk about even the garage size and the total of garage plus living unit, living space.
Madam Chair, Mark
Yes.
Tersani, I can help address that question as well. We're fortunate this evening not only to have Atri on the line that has provided information and clarification to the design team, C2K Architecture, but we also have Brad Wimblin on the line with Bridge Housing that has also been involved with us during the course of our design, and he can address when appropriate the size of the units for the low and the very low affordable units. I'd like to address the townhomes and the sizes there before directing the design team as far as the types of units that we wanted. We go out and do a third-party analysis and market study for not only Cupertino but the region on a whole, so we understand exactly the product type that is needed for the area. So that's where the size range comes from for the townhomes. And I'll if Brad can jump on the line here, that would be great, from Bridge Housing and or Atria can address the size of the units for the senior housing.
Hi there, this is Brad, just trying to unmute. Yeah, we haven't this building's still conceptually designed. So, the unit sizes here obviously are a range. We sometimes include a 2-bedroom unit on occasion as a manager's unit. But this mix of studios and ones is consistent with the senior housing that we own and manage. I think we own over 40 affordable senior housing projects that are what we call active senior, which is how this affordable building would sort of be categorized.
So my question really is, which ones are the BMR units in those buildings specifically? Because I have it in text form, so I don't have it in table form. So if someone could total that up and let me know the number of bedrooms and the square footage, I would appreciate that.
Sure, I can start. Building 2 is completely affordable. It's 100% BMR. Where building 1 is out of all those units, but 9 of those units will be considered BMR, and those would range. And those will be determined which units when we get through the programming stage as condition for the project to show which units will be BMR, which not, and they would have to be consistent with the consistent and dispersed within that building as to which ones are BMR and which are market rate.
Okay, so just to clarify, so in building number 2, we have 18 studios and 21 one-bedrooms, and for building 1, we don't know the sizes of them, but there will be 9 BMR units. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay, and they're not going to be the memory care units.
My understanding is not. If the applicant wants to,
that is correct. Madam Chair, the memory care units will not be below market rate.
Okay, and then continuing on with some of the questions from Vice Chair Wong, I was wondering if we could look at the floor, which has the memory care units on it, that level. It might take a minute to pull that up. And then, and I think, I think that's very interesting, especially considering the possibility, the potential that there might be social distancing requirements, given that there are common areas at the end of the hallway. And I was curious because I don't recall seeing the bathrooms in the individual units, how that was going to be arranged and planned for.
There are most certainly bathrooms within the memory care unit. So the individual units each have a bathroom. What they do not have is they do not have a kitchen for safety reasons, as you could understand.
Okay, and I'm hoping to have a little bit more information about what memory care units mean, what kind of, I believe I read that there's not going to be nursing care. I was wondering what the requirements, the parameters are around that, so that people understand what it means when we're offering a memory care units. What does that even mean?
Sure, it's for residents with cognitive impairments, early stage Alzheimer's, dementia, and those types of memory care related or memory impairment issues. And it's a secure wing to protect the residents from elopement and wandering. There's a dedicated staff that supports that area specifically and serves those residents from an engagement perspective, from a housekeeping perspective, and to the extent they require additional services beyond just the memory care portion. If they require help with other activities of daily living, whether it be dressing, grooming, etc., which a large portion of them, as you could understand, do.
All right, thank you. I have a question for staff regarding the BMR requirements for sizes of units and square footage, a number of bedrooms, regarding our City Council Resolution 15-037, our BMR manual. I was wondering if that requirement could be clarified.
Sure. So, the third waiver of this project is to consolidate the senior housing in one building. That was the original request. Even with the modified request, we had that basically non-dispersal throughout the whole project. And so when we looked at this as part of that waiver, we, under the umbrella of that waiver, we also looked at the comparable unit sizes as well. And we found through an analysis of similar types of senior housing developments, everything from the veranda, which is at the lowest income, to something like the chateau, which is higher income. It was very rare that we found any of those projects with more than a bedroom. I'm sorry, more than a one bedroom. If in very rare cases they have two bedrooms, and where they did have, and when we did compare the size of the studios in the one bedrooms, they were pretty much. This one fell in line with those. In fact, in most cases, are actually larger. To say even through the market rate one. In terms of building one, those. The nine units within building one will have to be dispersed equally throughout. So they're not going to be located in, like I said, one section of floor 3 furthest away from the sunshine. It's going to have to be consistent, with what you're implying with the BMR manual as well. And that's all conditioned as part of the development plan.
So what happens when there's a comparison made with the townhouse and row house section of the project with these senior units? Do we have to have some parity with those sizes of units? Because you're looking at 3 bedrooms, up to 2,500 square feet.
Sure, and I'll invite the city attorney's office to weigh in, because it goes up to state law and density bonus laws and how we treat senior housing versus non-senior market rate housing as well. Again, one of the waivers for this was to consolidate the senior housing in one building, and we felt even through our analysis that requiring this to have a comparable 3-bedroom unit in a senior living facility, that's very rare, if ever. It would be, would not be, again, as part of the umbrella of the third wave, would not be appropriate.
Okay, so let me see if I understand this. Because you are allowed to consolidate the senior housing into one building, if you were to apply that rule, it's now to that building in and of itself. So you would need to match the unit sizes with the market rate. The BMRs need to match the market rate in that building. Okay, and you found some statutory guidelines to back you up for this.
Correct.
Okay. I'm kind of curious how the bus stop was moved from the location that it was originally at. Was there other than providing more convenient location for the residents in the Westport property? Was it considered the number of students who would need to cross the street at the existing crosswalk on the east side of Stevens Creek Boulevard? Because I didn't hear that in the discussion, and I was wondering if because I've been there, it's a pretty significant number of students are crossing that street. Did that come into play? And if not, I'd like it to be in the future when you reevaluate it. I think that might be a question for Chad.
Yeah, I might have to ask Mark Falgut if what triggered his relocating that bus stop. I'm not exactly sure what the trigger was that had that relocated at that point in time. With your and Alan's recommendations, we will look at that and we will coordinate with VTA to ensure that whatever happens with the bus stop is the best solution there. But potentially, Mark Falgut can provide that information.
Thanks, Chad. Mark Falgo, Kimley Horn, civil engineer working for KT Urban. The city's bike plan actually shows that bus stop on that in the new location that we're showing, and it also shows the Class 4 bike paths on Stephen Creek Road. We talked with Chad, the city, and he asked us to go to VTA and verify whether or not they wanted it moved. And currently, VTA is saying yes, they think they're going to want it moved. So we simply followed that. Like Chad said earlier, we'll continue to coordinate with them and the city in order to verify that that's the best spot for it.
Okay, thank you. I see that Commissioner Takahashi has a question.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, before we get off the bus stop, the other access point is the senior center. Obviously, it's a better access point for the senior center where it currently is located. Going to the BMR disbursement, one of the exceptions that's being sought is not having BMR disbursement, primarily BMR located in Building 2 with, I think what I've heard is 9 units spilling over into Building 1, and that the 9 units in Building 1 would be dispersed. I guess I just wanted to understand the rationale a little bit more. I think I know, but I'm looking for confirmation in terms of, is it level of care type of a distribution element, or what is the main rationale for needing that exception?
In terms of Building 2, it has to do with what building code requirements. A lot of it also the level of care. I think you're on the right track with that too. There's certain types of amenities for senior housing development that are needed specifically for that development that wouldn't be needed to say within a market rate, non-age restricted type of development itself too. I think some of the examples that the applicant had given would be like handrails in the hallways, wider hallways, certain ADA types of amenities as well. And I believe that's if the applicant's architect can jump in and can maybe add some more examples of what specifically, or even the someone from ATRIC can jump in, what specifically differentiates the build out of a senior housing apartment than like a market rate apartment too.
Yeah, because I would assume that both anything housing seniors will have all those amenities as well. So I guess it's not clear what the main differentiating element is. Yeah. So if somebody could answer that would be great, because I think the whole intent, obviously, of this BMR disbursement is not to easily identify BMR residents as low-income residents, and we kind of lose that with this exception, in that we have a whole building that's full of BMR tenants. Other concerns I personally am not concerned about in terms of quality of the building and those things. I'm sure that KT Urban will make sure there's equity in terms of the construction, but there is a certain stigma associated with, well, that's a whole BMR building, and so just the rationale such that the exception is needed is really all I'm kind of hunting for.
Sure. No, understood too. And again, the special needs that are attributed to the BMR building itself, you can't easily combine with what you say like a market rate application. And so I'm going to try to pull up the justification statement so maybe I can better illustrate to the public. So let me see. Pull that up right here. Right there. And I apologize if it takes a minute to pull this up.
Can I add something?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oops. This is Andy Faber. I'm looking at a letter that we exchanged correspondence in 2018 with the staff and your outside counsel on this issue. And we've agreed that there's certain provisions of state law where housing is restricted to seniors, and that's to be senior housing, it has to actually be restricted. It's subject to, I'm sort of reading from the letter, it's subject to specific design features, such as doors and hallways accessible by wheelchairs, grab bars and railings for those who have difficulty walking, additional lighting in common areas, access provided without the use of stairs, and must be designed to encourage social contact by providing at least one common room and common open space. There are rules and regulations about restricting the occupancy, and there's a federal requirement, which seems kind of strange, but says that policies, procedures, and marketing must demonstrate that the senior development as a whole is intended for seniors. So all of these things, when you put them together, appear to mean that you really can't distribute senior restricted housing. Nothing prevents seniors from buying a row house or a townhome, for example. Obviously, they're allowed to. But to make it senior restricted housing and actually a senior project,
Right. I guess
it's virtually impossible to do it in a dispersed manner.
Right. I was just looking at disbursement between buildings 1 and buildings 2 primarily versus.
Oh, okay. I thought it sounded like Chairperson Moore was talking more about the possible disbursement throughout the project. Building 1 and 2, if we added a floor to building 1 or to building 2, we could put more senior housing there. There's no very good way to put more of it in building 1, I don't think. But the architects could talk about that.
Okay. It's really capacity driven then at this point in time.
Vice Chair Wong.
Yeah, just a quick question, follow up to Andy there. Question is, are you also guys looking at HUD Section 202 supportive housing for the elderly? That may be why you might have some federal guidelines. That's the first question. So.
I'm not aware that we've specifically been looking at that exact kind of housing. Perhaps the Atria people would comment that. I'm not aware that we actually looked at that specifically.
Okay, yeah, because that would be the reason you have weird federal guidelines in there. So.
Hi, this is Brad Wibbelin with Bridge. As you know, the HUD 202 program is greatly diminished. It was completely out of commission for many years. So we're not actually proposing a HUD building here.
Okay. Just making sure. I think residents would want to know that as well. I think the other question I have was really on trees and back to the city. Have we looked at these 100-inch tree spades to preserve some of the trees? I think a lot of people have been looking at ways to keep these old trees together. And so just the question out to the staff.
Clarify that 100-inch.
There's these 100-inch, diameter tree spades that you can just take these old trees, pop them up, carve it out and take them out, because there's only a few of them there. I think there's 7 trees that are there. So
yeah, in terms of actual ways to move it, no, we just look, when our consultant arborist looked at the reports from the applicant and even the applicant's arborist too, they considered all these things, not exactly how to move it, but the effects of it after being moved. My understanding, I could be completely off, is that a tree spade, it's great. It makes it easier to move it. Doesn't necessarily add life to the tree once it's planted, and that's really what the concern is too. It would be.
We got some large projects that could use some old trees that maybe they'll trade for, potentially. Yeah. So, so that's all. Okay. Thanks. I'm done.
Okay, looking back to address or clarify my statement for Andrew Faber, with regards to dispersal. It sounds as though you have statutory support for having the senior units all in separate buildings, for one. And then the next part is because in our municipal code, we then reference our below market rate housing, and we have a requirement to have the same number of bedrooms and similar sizes and finish. And so I wanted to make sure that we aren't adding on another waiver if those weren't of similar sizes. And I feel assured from John that that you are trying to match the same sizes of the senior units. And so I want to understand how these rules come into play with regards to that. I do have a question with regards to the density bonus waivers. There's mention of the Wolmer case, and I was wondering if the third-party review was completed, showing that the density bonus base plan met the general plan requirements. I had seen it for the previous project, but we were given a new project a few days ago, this one that we're reviewing now, and I was wondering if they had time to go through it to see if it met the requirements.
I have to ask you to repeat the density bonus space plan.
So in density bonus law, you need to meet the general plan requirements, excluding the density bonus units. So I was wondering, and there was an analysis previously done on the last project, which had the just 5 density bonus units. And I was wondering if there was a new analysis completed on this project, since we've added more density bonus units.
I don't, for some reason, Chair Moore, forgive me, I don't recall that analysis being done. I can confer with my colleagues and see if they can recall that, and then get back to you at a later part of this presentation or later part of this hearing, if that's possible.
But if I may add, the base is still the same. It's still the 237 units. And it's just a different amount of density bonus that's added. And the density bonus units that are added do not have to comply with the same standards, because typically they don't. I mean, because they're added above the maximum density that's otherwise permitted. So I'm not sure the question really arises, is any different for the enhanced project over the original project. You're muted, Chairperson Moore.
Chair Moore, I think you're muted. Are you?
You're muted. Yeah.
There we go. Okay. Another question I have is from page 7 of your letter, Andrew. It says that the base density was 25 dwelling units per acre, and that it would be increasing to 30 dwelling units per acre. But in this presentation, I believe we were looking at 30 dwelling units per acre for the site. And I was wondering if someone could explain that a little bit.
Well, I'm sure John can, but in summary, there's a in the heart of the city plan, it talks about, in the general plan, it talks about 25 units per acre as being a realistic capacity, which would be 200 units for this site. But the general plan also says the maximum is 30, actually, not 25, which would be the 237 units. And it says that we have to get however, it says we need a conditional use permit to go from 25 to 30. And so, as John Martier mentioned, we applied for a conditional use permit. We actually don't read it that we need the conditional use permit, because the way it was presented to us, staff's position, which we disagree with, but we're trying to go along anyway and obviously get the project approved. But staff's position was that in order to get any density bonus, we had to start at 30 units per acre. For example, if we had come in with a project at 206 units and then said we want a density bonus on top of that, staff's position was you don't qualify because you haven't gone to the full 30 units per acre for the 8 acres. So they said you need to apply for a conditional use permit pursuant to the general plan to get up to 30 units per acre. And at that point, you can ask for a density bonus. To us, that was kind of a catch-22, because the density bonus law says you can't require conditional use permits to get a density bonus. So it's kind of a matter of interpretation. But regardless, we did apply for the conditional use permit, and treating the base density then as the maximum allowed under the general plan of 30, that starts out at 237 units. And the original project, then we only asked for 5 more. And we were criticized for that and said, well, that's not really maximizing. You ought to get more out of the density bonus law. If we, the city, are going to give you waivers and do all this, there ought to be more sort of in it in terms of providing needed housing. And so that's one of the refinements that we did make in coming up with the newer proposal, which was to then say, all right, well, we can still, because of the way the senior living system works, we can add 52 more density bonus units and get up to the 294 that we are now at. But we're still starting at the same 237 which is the 30 unit per acre base that we think the general plan allows. Have I butchered that too badly, John, or is that roughly what you would have said?
Yes, sound like me.
Could I be quickly reminded what the previous plan was before we received this plan package? I know we had the 5 density bonus units, but what was the total number of units?
Yeah, it was 242. It was 237 plus 5, 242. And in addition, the senior housing was the 39 units in building 2. But the other part of the project, the building 1, the big building, was not senior housing. It was just market rate apartments, basically, over retail.
So was it merely for building 1 an alteration of the units within that envelope of the building? So the building itself is remained the same, but what's in it is different.
That's basically correct. Yes.
Okay, good. Because the numbers sounded the same. The heights of the towers, everything looked the same.
Yeah. Well, no. Part of the idea of designing the newer project was to say, all right, the EIR has already started analyzing certain building shapes and sizes and contributions, and these are important criteria in environmental analysis. So in order to come up with the enhanced senior and family living project that we have, we said, how do we do it in the same building envelope? And it's actually kind of a tribute, I think, to the architects that they could do that.
Okay, all right, thank you. Do we have any further clarifying questions from the planning commissioners?